I'm going to tell you 3 unbelievable short stories, and at the end, you have to guess which ones are real and which ones are made up. We'll reveal the truth at the end of the video. Let's get into the first story. You've probably had a situation where you got to know someone for a while, only to later realize that you're actually related. Well, our first story, called After 15 Years, is about exactly that. Noah had been married to his wife for several years. They had a beautiful child together and were living a happy life. But one day, Noah got some shocking news. His sister was still alive and living in Los Angeles. But something didn't make sense. Noah's parents had told him when he was a kid that his sister had passed away. Yet, with this new information, it was clear they had lied. His sister wasn't dead. She had just gone missing. Noah didn't know much about her. All he knew was that her name was Sophia. She was 2 years younger than him, and she was currently living in Los Angeles. From that day on, Noah became obsessed with finding her. He did everything he could, but he only managed to gather small pieces of information at a time. It took years, but slowly, he started figuring out where she was. And then, he made a mind-blowing discovery. His sister was living in the same neighborhood as him. Excited, he rushed home to tell his wife everything. He told her that his long-lost sister was somewhere nearby, but as he kept searching, something strange caught his attention. No one in the area matched his sister's description. There was no woman named Sophia who was 2 years younger than him, except for one person, his own wife. Shocked, Noah told her everything, and they decided to take a DNA test. When the results came back, the truth was undeniable. Noah and his wife were actually brother and sister. But here's where it gets even crazier. They already had a child together. Despite everything, Noah and Sophia chose not to separate. They decided to stay together for the rest of their lives, not as siblings, but as husband and wife. Stick around until the end of the video because we'll reveal whether this story is real or just something our team made up. The second story, called The Killing Spirit, is about a woman who had a child about 60 years ago and lived a hard, poverty-stricken life. But something or someone didn't want her to have any peace. Like I said, about 60 years ago, a woman named Amelia lived in a small village in America with her husband and one of their children. One day, as Amelia was about to leave the house, she opened the door and was met with a terrifying sight. Standing right in front of her was a huge, hideous creature. It had massive, sharp claws, 2 twisted horns, huge ears and eyes, and its skin was blood red. The moment she saw it, Amelia blacked out. When she woke up, she was still standing in the same spot where she had seen the creature, but it was gone. She told her husband and friends about what happened. Most of them believed her, since back then, belief in spirits and the supernatural was much more common. But then, something even stranger happened. One day, while Amelia was walking around her house doing her daily chores, she suddenly froze. Right in front of her was another horrifying creature. It was a cow, but not a normal one. This cow had an eerie appearance, with 2 massive horns. And the most disturbing part, it was missing its back half. It had no hind legs and no lower body, yet it was still alive, still moving. Amelia stood there, paralyzed in fear. Then, in an instant, the cow charged straight at her, slamming into her with full force. Once again, she blacked out. When she came to, she immediately told her husband everything. They both knew these events were far from normal. They thought Amelia was the one being targeted. But they were wrong. The real target wasn't Amelia. It was her son. Not long after, Amelia's young boy suddenly fell ill. His body weakened, and he could barely move. Then, strange handprints and finger marks started appearing all over his skin. These marks were multiplying rapidly, as if someone invisible, was tormenting him. Within hours, his skin changed color completely, and then he was gone. The moment Amelia lost her son, the terrifying creatures never returned. They vanished from her life forever. Now, figuring out whether this story is real or fake is no easy task, but that's up to you to decide. Stay with us until the end of the video, and we'll reveal whether this actually happened to Amelia, or if it's just a twisted story meant to mess with your mind. Now it's time for our last story. Story number 3, called The Bloody Queen. Imagine this. It's the year 1602, and something horrifying is happening in Hungary. Every night, people lock their doors and windows, sitting in silence, too afraid to make a sound. Because almost every night, They hear the screams of a young girl echoing through the city. Girls being forced into carriages and taken to the castle of Queen Elizabeth Báthory. For years, no one knew why these girls were being kidnapped or what happened to them inside that castle. But one thing was certain: none of them ever came back. This nightmare continued for years until one night, a different kind of scream was heard. A girl was running through the streets, screaming at the top of her lungs, "Help me! The queen is a murderer! The castle is full of dead girls!" But, as always, no one dared to step outside. By morning, the townspeople found the girl's dead body in the streets. She had been stabbed to death. That's when they finally realized the horrible truth. The rumors were real, but knowing the truth only made people even more terrified. For 10 more years, the kidnappings continued, until finally, in the year 1610, the Prime Minister of Hungary ordered an attack on the castle. Soldiers surrounded it, preparing for the horrors they had been warned about. But nothing could have prepared them for what they were about to see. When they entered the castle, many of them passed out from shock. Some even ran away. The floors were covered in blood. The bodies of young girls were everywhere. Some were hanging from the ceiling, others were dismembered. It was a massacre. The soldiers killed everyone inside the castle, except for the queen. They found her in a bathroom. But this wasn't just any bathroom. Instead of water, the cups were filled with blood. Instead of water in the bathtub, there was blood. The queen bathed in the blood of young girls. She would hang the girls upside down, then stab their skulls, letting the blood drain from their bodies. That's why they didn't execute her. Instead, they locked her inside that same room. Over the course of 10 years, Queen Elizabeth Báthory had murdered around 600 girls. Years later, someone asked her, "Why did you do it?" She smiled and said, "No elixir grants eternal youth like blood does." And strangely enough, she wasn't wrong when she finally died 4 years later, in 1614, at the age of 55. Her body showed no signs of aging. Her skin was flawless, not a single wrinkle in sight. A bizarre story. But do you think it's true, or just something we made up? Stick around till the end of the video to find out. Our stories have come to an end, so let's do a quick recap. Story number 1. After 15 years, Noah spent years searching for his long-lost sister, only to discover that his wife was actually his sibling. But instead of separating, they chose to stay together as husband and wife. Story number 2. The Killer Spirit. Amelia encountered terrifying creatures twice. Not long after, strange handprints appeared on her son's body. A few hours later, her son mysteriously passed away. Story number 3. The Bloody Queen. For years, young girls in Hungary were being kidnapped. Eventually, it was revealed that Elizabeth Báthory was using their blood as an elixir of youth. Now, it's time to reveal which of these stories were true and which were made up by our channel's admins. I'll give you 10 seconds to make your guesses. Keep in mind, all of them could be fake. All of them could be real. Or maybe it's a mix. Let's start with story number 1. If you guessed that this story was fake, you're wrong. This story is 100% real and actually happened. What about story number 2? If you thought this one was made up, well, you're wrong again. This story is also completely real. And now, for story number 3. If you believed this one was true, congratulations! You guessed correctly. This story is also real. In this episode, all 3 stories were based on real events. None of them were fictional. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and check out our other content. And if something strange or unbelievable has ever happened to you, share your story in the comments. We might feature it in one of our future videos. Until next time, goodbye!